Okay, so let's get started because we have many topics and interesting experiences to talk about with our guest speaker, Smit Patel. Smith is a fourth-year pharmacy student at Ohio State University, and he is a co-founder, TEDx speaker, Forbes Under 30 scholar. He's an innovator, digital health enthusiast, and the list goes on. So welcome, Smit, and thank you for joining us today.
Alyssa, excited to be here.
Wanted to start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and your path to pharmacy school.
Absolutely, I would love to. I actually moved to the US in 2016, and I was working for a small pharma in their forecasting and business development for understanding the pharmaceutical system, how it works in the US. And that led me to the pharmacy school because I wanted to get clinically virtuous. And I think early on in my pharmacy school, I found out there were things and opportunities that were outside just because of the dichotomy of what was going on in the real life in the pharma to what we were being learning. I found some opportunities that were more exciting and fun, and something I wanted to explore more because there's so much more that pharmacy students can do. And so I started working for a commercial department of a medical agency in my P1 to working for a startup last year called Health Plan Data Solutions. And then I had opportunity in the venture capital to right now I'm working with Extenda as a consultancy firm.
That's incredible. You've already done so much just as a student. And for those of us who are just starting out in pharmacy school, could you explain a little bit about what digital health is? Because I know that's a big interest of yours, and that's kind of what you center your opportunities around, and how that applies to pharmacy.
Absolutely. Great question, and I can talk about this for an entire day. But digital health technically is, if you see an ecosystem of technology integration platforms into healthcare, where users in form of patients or who wants to get involved with their wellness health. But the only difference between digital health and other classification like digital medicine and therapeutic is that digital health is not regulated by FDA, and also we are not looking for clinical evidence. So the examples of it could be health information technology or telehealth, or even the EHR systems that we see falls in the category of digital health. When it comes to application, I think we have seen a lot of application of digital therapeutics recently, which is technically a smaller version of digital health that is FDA regulated and that also shows outcomes. For example, recently last month, Endeavor RX by Akili was released, which is a video game, and it is being prescribed to kids of age 80 years old for ADHD. And it has shown this clinical research that it has been proven to help. So those are the differences. And if we see application more, we have seen so many applications like the sensor technology, the wearables, if you see Fitbit, how that plays into the role. We have seen smart technologies like smart toilet seat to predict heart failure, which is under the research phase, to pharmacogenomics, a lot of use of big data, artificial intelligence, and voice. So I think there is a lot more into this space, and all I can say is 10 years from now, when we look back, say in 2013, when we look back, we'll be thinking like, it was barbaric that we were taking so many drugs, because now we are moving into the phase of more digitalization and using technology in pharmacy and healthcare.
Thank you for explaining that. Along those lines, you interned at a place called Health Data Solutions. Could you tell us a little bit more about your internship there and how you got that internship?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually a very interesting story because I stumbled upon it and I was huge chicken because in my second year of summer, as a P2 year of summer, I'd applied to, I think, so many internships from pharma to, I had applied to Google, which I did 7 rounds, to Microsoft and IBM, so tech companies and also like pharma companies and different opportunities. And I got rejected for more than 180 companies. And I think during that time, Yeah, it was interesting. I have an Excel list for it. And I think during that time, I was doubting myself, thinking like, am I doing something wrong? Am I not good enough? And I think it was a matter of time that when I didn't have an opportunity, I thought, what if I create an opportunity? So what I did was I used LinkedIn as one of the platform. I'd reach out to a few of the people I had connected earlier and as a P1 year, and I asked them if I can pitch some ideas, what value I can bring to their table. So I did one-on-one coffee meets. I texted a few of connections, then went on a 30-minute call to gather some insights. And I pitched to three companies, and one of the companies, Health Plan Data Solutions, which is technically a startup, which does drug price transparency work. They invited me for a meeting, and I went there, and that was an unofficial interview, and I got a job out of it.
That's incredible. I don't hear, like, I've never met many students that created their own opportunities like that. And that's not something as a student I've been told I could do, or not something that I ever thought about doing. So I think that's really interesting that you kind of created this opportunity for yourself. And along those lines, could you tell us a little bit about your current work at, you're at Exenda right now, just about your position there and how you got into that role as well?
Absolutely. I think that is another interesting story because I had not applied to Exenda for a job. I was on a rotation. My first rotation was with Exenda in their strategic market access and business intelligence consulting firm. And I worked there for a month. I had some ideas that I had presented as my main project, what the company will benefit from. And I had worked on a few of the projects there, from payer research policy to digital therapeutics to gene therapy projects. And from that, I think based on leadership wanted me to continue working on those projects. And they offered me a position, and it was a really good position that I couldn't say no to. So that's how I got that position. And right now what I work is, I work as an RA in the digital therapeutics division, and I'm trying to helping them create this new service, which would be one of the world's most comprehensive service for digital therapeutics. And we are trying to help payers and pharma identify that there's so much potential, and the research that we are doing will help them to partner to get those DTX on their formulary so patients can have access to it, and multiple different things.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible. So you were able to do this working for Exenda at the same time as your APPIs, since you are in your fourth year. Have you found that difficult, like balancing work and your schoolwork or your rotation work?
Actually, it's funny that I always had a job during my entire pharmacy school. I always used to do some pro bono work or some consulting work even during pharmacy school. So I learned that early on as a time management skill when I was a P1 and P2, and I took up some responsibilities that time. So it is not that hard. I will definitely say it is challenging, but I think I love doing what I'm doing, and that makes it, so much easier.
That is true. That really helps. So can we talk a little bit about your APPIs that you're currently doing in your fourth year? I guess give a brief overview of what APPIs that you have lined up or that you've already completed and have lined up. And I want to talk a little bit more about how you figured out your schedule for fourth year.
Absolutely. So you just heard my first rotation was with Exenda in their strategic market access and business intelligence team. And my second year was an ambulatory clinic, which was, I found this preceptor who was more technologically driven, and it was an M-Care clinic where we were using telehealth platform, a software for documentation for chronic management. So it was more digital health and chronic management, and worked on some cool projects with Dr. Alan Nicole. And this month I am in Nationwide Children's Hospital's Office of Technology Commercialization. So it's technically a division where all the early innovators and patenting work happens. So our office helps say for example, a physician has an idea and they want to commercialize that idea or commercialize a medical device. So we help them through the process of doing that, from writing the patent to negotiation to partnerships. Next month, I'll be at BMS in their forecasting division for innovative medicine. And post that, I go on some of my hospital rotations. And I have planned it in 3 different sections because I'm interested in non-traditional. I wanted to understand how the hospital administration works from a very big private firm to a rural firm to someone who is not that established, also in their EMRs and stuff. And I go in nuclear medicine, a specialty clinic, and so on. Yeah, that's my exciting P4 year.
I think that's one of the most exciting lineup of rotations I've heard so far. Because I mean, for the most part, we go through our experiential team. They kind of give out all these different rotations in the areas that we need them in. And a lot of people just accept that and move on. But you did something a little different with your rotations and how you set them up. Could you give us a little background about how you got the rotations that you wanted?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. Yeah, I think.
Uh-oh. I think your audio cut out.
As,
Oh, no, wait. Can you speak again?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Sorry about that. I think I had worked on that process early on as a P2 and as P3 because I knew the funny part was I always kept friends who were ahead of me, like 2 or 3 years ahead of me. And being friends with them, you hear about their stories, you know who's good. So to align that, I had built the relationship with our experiential director early on, a year or 2, and tried having contracts from our OSCU firm to external firm like Merck or BMS. And doing that actually helped me to narrow down my focus on what I was interested and what was available and try to align those together.
That's awesome. How do you approach, what is your mindset going into these internships and these appies to help you stand out, especially on virtual rotations? Because I know that a lot of your rotations are still going to be virtual for this year.
Absolutely. I think that's a great question, which I learned recently because I was not thinking of going into a virtual rotation. But when I go into a rotation, I think my mindset is more about I'll have some goals for myself in terms of what I want to learn and what value I want to bring. And then we have some goal sessions. I try to do it with my preceptors early on or whoever who would be precepting me in internships early on in terms of here are some of my goals and this is our business need, how we can align and work together. Not something like, okay, this is the work that you are given and you've finished that, but more on the proactive side where, I want to learn about this and I'm very curious because there'll be so many different fields when you go into internships and into your rotations that you can work on. So identifying that goals early on definitely helps and clarifying it, putting it out there to the preceptor. And I think most of the preceptors are very willing to help you grow with your journey. When it comes to the second part of it, like the virtual ones, I think it was a little hard initially to adjust to it, but some of the strategies that I thought were really helpful was there's always a silver lining. So usually in the actual rotation, you only work from 9 to 5 or 9 to 6. Right now, you have access to those computers later on as well. So if you want to work on some of the projects and add in extra hours, that's one of your added benefit to it. So if you want to connect with someone, I think I had a lot of one-on-ones on a virtual note, and then I set up that just to get to know more about the fellow or some professional who's working in a specific field that I'm interested in. And I think the second thing is asking good questions is always
Oh no, I think Smit froze.
Sorry about that, everyone. Give us a couple more minutes. In the meantime, while we're waiting for Smit, feel free to post in the chat where you guys are from, universities, states. Love to hear where you guys are from. So as Schmidt is joining us in a second. Hey, Schmidt, are you there?
Yep. Sorry, it's raining outside and something dicey with technology again. So yeah, as I was saying, I think identifying those strategies of one-on-one networking, even if it is virtual, is good. And, you know, asking them if there's anything you can help them out with the project. And I think they always value your added extra step.
I think that's really good advice because a lot of people are concerned about that networking component that they're missing out on by doing virtual rotations because you don't get like a face-to-face, like you can't meet this person in person. So do you just like, do you ask your preceptor, like, do you have the contact for this person, or how do you go about like actually networking and getting that one-on-one time?
Yeah, so there are two ways. One, you can ask your preceptor and they will give you a list, which is usually, I feel, I'm not adding in any work. So the easiest thing, just go on LinkedIn and add your preceptor early on LinkedIn, and you'll see from that specific companies who else is there, and you can see their journeys. And if someone interests you to the field, you can ask your preceptor like, hey, can I connect with this person? Or ask your preceptor early on, like, I'm interested in this field. Do you feel, is there anyone who I should connect with from the company who would be a valuable connection?
That's awesome advice. And it seems like you use LinkedIn a lot, and it's a great tool for you to network and to make opportunities and to meet different people. As a P1 or a P2, do you have some tips to help them set themselves up for success?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't say as an advice, but I would say something that I had done earlier, if that might be helpful, is I started early on. I was trying to think, what would those experiences be which is different and which is something that I love doing it at the same time. And I think early on as a student, one of the best thing that you can do is take risks without being accountable for anything. And that's the beauty about being a student is you go into an organization, you get the experience for 2 or 3 months, and if you don't like it, you know, there's always option B or plan B, you can go for it. So I think taking risk a little bit and tasting different fields to see which one you like or you don't like, I think it's a good start. And second, I would also say like mentors, like identify some mentors, 2 or 3 during that journey that will help you to show some path and show a way moving forward in the professional field. And I know a lot of people say this, networking is important, and I cannot stress how important networking is, because networking has got me so many opportunities, from HDA's Health Plan Data Solutions internship to Exenda's job. It was purely because of networking. Those jobs were not posted on LinkedIn or any recruiting site. It was based out of an opportunity that someone saw within me, and there was a business need, and there was a collaboration that led to those opportunities. So I think networking is huge, and I would say having friends from diverse groups helps a lot.
Yes, for sure. That is great advice. And as a P3, I'm entering my P3 year. What advice would you have for a student like me in this, I guess, part of my pharmacy school journey?
Oh, good question. I think you're doing everything right. I would say when I'm talking about my opportunities, creating it, I think you are the best example, Alyssa, that you create this opportunity within, as an ambassador within this PhD Academy. And that's fantastic. I think that's something that would stand out because you took an initiative. It was not something that was a checklist, a part of school. So why don't you tell me that first before I share something? Because I think people will enjoy listening a little bit about you creating that opportunity.
Thanks for that. So I guess all the advice you're saying is really true, because the reason why that I'm here today is because I kind of found a mentor in Beju Shah, and he introduced me to the Pharmacy Informatics Academy, and that's how I met David. And Beju told me to join the happy hour, the pharmacy happy hour that he had. And from there, we kind of collaborated and realized how beneficial something like this could be for students. And it was all very organic and kind of snowballed into this webinar series that we are in right now. So I can say that that is some very good advice, and it really works having a mentor and having knowing your interests. So thank you.
I love that we could validate it. But yeah, as a P3, I think because you're very close to the API year, and I think during fall or you'll be starting to apply for those P4 rotations, I think this is the perfect way to identify where you want to work. And even if you don't know where you want to work, diversify your assets and diversify the rotations that you can get. Instead of, if you're not interested in a community pharmacy or a hospital and want to explore more non-traditional routes, I think there are some requirements like community pharmacy you'll have to do. Think of new ways that your college has. Ask your director if there's a list that you can go on now, or ask your friends who are on rotations or who have completed it to see if there is a specialty pharmacy that you can do, or a nuclear medicine rotation, or something that inspires you. So it's more about looking out further and planning it 1 year ahead and start working from now, because I think there's so many applications. By October and November you'll be filling out from FDA to different pharma companies. So I think planning it out will help you as a P3.
Thank you. Yes, I'm already very nervous about getting the rotations that I want and trying to figure out that schedule. So
work on your CV this summer. I will tell you, at the end, it would be chaotic. So best thing you can do is get your CV out, write some cover letters, and get it checked with your mentors or someone who you feel they would give you a good advice. And also have some people who will recommend you, like plan it out strategically, that people who you have worked in past, and say like, hey, I'll be coming out with this opportunity in the near future, but I want to just give a heads up. Would you be willing to write me a strong letter of recommendation? Not just a good one, but a strong one that will set you apart from other applicants.
That is awesome advice. And I wanted to take time now for anyone in the chat, if you wanted to ask me a question, we can switch over to that. If not, I do have a few questions to ask him from the sign up. But, oh, perfect.
I love it. Number 4, fellowship or residency application. Oh, that's a great question, Alice.
Schmidt, would you want to repeat the question?
Yes, yeah. Absolutely. I can repeat the question. Thank you, Alice, for asking that. I think it's a great question. Alice asked that, do you recommend working on letter of intent even before fellowship or residency application begin if you already know what specific program you're aiming for? I think right now, because we are on, correct me if I'm wrong, Alice, you might be a P4 who'll be applying for a fellowship or residency soon, or a P3. So doing something early on is always beneficial, in terms of that will buy you some time for interview preparations, or buy you some time for when things get crazy. I think when PPS or the Rutgers program will open up for fellowship or residency application in December, right now you can start working on those and get it checked by someone else and get it out of your way, I think, and then focus on some of the projects that you can do over your rotation. So I would recommend working on it. Like, I think one thing that I have been doing, which would be beneficial, is if I've created this Excel sheet where every month I have an Excel tab for every month, and I write down what are projects that I have worked on during the rotation, because what happens is after 6 months, when the residency interviews are coming up, or fellowship interviews are coming up, we usually forget what we had worked on. So I'm doing that every month and updating my CV based on that, so I don't have to worry about it all the way at the end during fall. I hope that helps.
Does anyone else have any questions? Oh. Or anything that you'd like to ask Smit, specifically about the work he's done, or about advice for applying for any internships, opportunities? Oh, wow, yes.
I love it. Awesome. The next questions is from Grace. Thank you, Grace, for asking. What's your pathway or plan after graduation? And what do you want to do in next 5 to 10 years? And how to prep as a student? So I'll take one by one. I think the first question is my plan after pharmacy school, which is I'm figuring it out. I'm keeping my options open at this point in terms of doing a fellowship or directly applying for a job, because I feel I have some experiences backed up. So, but all I can say is I'm looking into opportunities in the space of digital health and digital therapeutic in next 5 to 10 years, because I want my story in next 5 to 10 years to be something where we know that digital health is right now a curiosity. Like everyone gets excited when they hear about new things coming out. But having done research in that field, I have seen that digital health could be a research tool, and soon in next 5 years, we'll be seeing it as a clinical tool which physicians would be prescribing and which pharmacists would be counseling on. So I think my plan is to turn that curiosity into a research tool, and a research tool of clinical validation in the whole process of it that will help pharmacists expand their services and expand their roles. And then second is how to prep as a student, and what are some of the opportunities you see as pharmacists in tech and innovation. I think that's a great question. And Biju and David, please chime in because you have been in this space as well. But there are so many opportunities out there, from the pharma side to even the health technology side, from informatics to even working in managed care. I think it's interesting. I was talking to someone, his name is Kyle from Express Script. He is working on a digital health formulary, which is specifically how to get reimbursement and access to those products, digital health products, to patients. And there are many opportunities. It's about where you fit in or what interests you. David, do you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, I was just going to add, in terms of the opportunities, there's so many positions out there that isn't labeled a pharmacist position. Like myself, I'm an engineer at a health tech company. And so, whenever everyone goes to pharmacy school, their expectation is, oh, I want to be a pharmacist at the end of the day. I always advocate, especially if you're looking to enter the health tech world or the vendor side of things, is just to be open to as much opportunity and just not be bogged down too much about the title, but really what you want to do out of your life. For me personally, when I graduated pharmacy school, I was offered several pharmacist positions and then a position at a health tech company. I ultimately decided that at the end of the day, I'm an innovator and I just so happen to be a pharmacist. And so that little mindset shift may help a lot of people out in determining where their next goals are. Where you might not feel, just so you don't feel pigeonholed that I have to be a pharmacist. You could really go out and do whatever you want to do and whatever makes you happy, but just be able to be more aware and open to different opportunities as much as possible.
I love it, David. And David is a walking example of someone who is not labeled as a pharmacist, though has so many responsibilities integrated as an engineer and as a pharmacist together. And, as he just mentioned, like there are so many people who would not be labeled as pharmacists and are working in different spaces. So I would say maybe trying out a field, for 3 months or 6 months or 1 year, and see if that helps you. And also in the parts of those technology or innovation, there you can bring innovation in any field you go in. Innovation is more of like you see a problem, and then you come out with some strategic ideas and go through the process and come out with solutions to it. And I'm excited to see where you see yourself, Grace. But thank you so much for asking. Hey, Amy. Yeah, absolutely. I would be happy to share more insights on rotation. Extenda is a consultant firm which is more driven by payers, and they help payers for bringing payers and pharma for bringing more drugs to the market faster in a more efficient way, or help them commercialize those drugs. So they come into the space of like market access. A lot of their division has HER, which is health economic and outcomes research. For example, how the pricing works, the reimbursement of these drugs work, and strategic initiatives in there. And some of my insights on rotations was I was a part of DTX policy research work, which is some research which I'll be presenting at the AMCP Nexus in upcoming 3 months, was about looking into what are some of the policies, because this is something new field, and a lot of DTX products are right now not available for our patients. So we wanted to look into what kind of payer policies are there. Are they covering it or not? Are they do they need a prior authorization, or how is it different from a normal drug? Like, how is this medical device different from a normal drug? And some of the regulatory parts of it. Another project that I worked on was more on telehealth, and one of our clients at pharma wanted to explore, because as pandemic we know, I think telehealth has increased more than 150% utilization. So how we can continue using that post-COVID and integrate it. If you take, for example, if you go to a dermatologist in person, you'll have to pay $300 or $500, $300 to $350 per visit. How does that look in telehealth? Would you want to pay $300 for a telehealth interaction for a few minutes? Probably not. So how would those play out? Would providers get reimbursed for it? How much? So that was interesting to work on, and a few other projects. Right. We have another point, another question. Alice asked, you mentioned about payers are examining evidence of DTX's digital therapeutics to determine coverage. In your experience, what are some of the key factors that they are taking into consideration, and what are some of the challenges to designing coverage? I think it's a fantastic question, and all of us, including all key stakeholders, are working on it. And sorry if it's too technical answer. Digital therapeutic coverage, meaning access to those to a regular patient, is something interesting. And what we have seen is some of the challenges are right now showing that clinical evidence and the outcome study. For example, we have all the clinical studies that were done, the number of participants were less because it's very narrow focus group, 8 to 12 years of age. Say, for example, for Endeavor RX, which is for ADHD, it's a mobile app, a video game app. It is for ADHD and only for patients, kids, for 8 to 12. So they have less number of participants. So what payers want to see is what are some of the outcomes. So those are some of the challenges that we have seen, and the regulatory framework right now that FDA is working on is not set in stone. So all these companies has to go through this program called pre-cert program, which is a software pre-certification program, and payers want to see if that is a regulatory framework that all these new innovative technologies need to go through. But fantastic question, and I would love to chat if you have more in future.
David, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was waiting. So I have 2 questions for Smit, actually.
Yeah.
The first question is going to be more conservative. The second question might be a little bit off the wall. So my first question is, So Schmidt, I see a lot on social media for you, especially on LinkedIn. So tell me about your experience on social media, why you post, and also some of the benefits of posting, and what type of niche do you try to target or share with your audience?
Yeah, it's a good question. I am not a social media guru, just like David, or Biju or Tony, I would say. But I think my ideology of sharing things on social media is more about creating this engagement platform for a community. It's kind of like a professional community, which is online and virtual. And I think I love learning about things that people are doing around the world. And also, I love sharing about things and sharing about my perspectives and take on those things. For example, someone shares an article. I could have the same ideology or I could have something different. So it's kind of like creating this community of benevolent super learners who wants to support you through the journey and who wants to learn from each other. And the second thing why I'm doing that is branding, which is something a lot of pharmacy students have not tapped into, and it's a great potential because what people see is what people will believe. So if someone had, like, this is something which people have told me without even my notice. For example, I had mentioned digital health and innovation in my email signature after I write Smit Patel, PharmD, and then digital health and innovation. And from that, one of the person had reached out about talking more into it. And when I share these things in a specific field, that shows that not only I'm learning, but also I have some kind of an interest, passion, or expertise in that process. And I think that connects me with the right people and that connects me with the right engagement during the whole process.
Cool. Thanks, Schmidt. And so my next question, like I said, it's a little bit off the wall, but knowing you where you have so many unique experiences, tell us about the dildo that inspires you.
Oh my God. Okay. It's a fun story. So no offense to anyone, but I was at MIT and Harvard Health Innovation Boot Camp in the summer of my P1. It was a boot camp where we were working on, we had a couple of lectures in the morning and at night we had to work on a project. So the idea was in 2 weeks, we had to create our own company. So when we were doing some problem research, the starting phase is we identify problems that we want to work on and a company that we want to create. So when we were doing that, we had so many ideas, like, do we want to create like a VR simulation for kids to help them reduce the vaccination fear? Do we want to create something that improves cervical cancer screening rate? Do we want to create in the field of, say, an inhaler that has a Bluetooth so that people don't forget using or bringing their inhalers wherever they go? So we had so many ideas, and it so happened that I was sitting there and one of my friends had snapped me a photo of a dildo from the New York Sex Museum that he was visiting, and it was like a bicycle with a dildo, and that gave me an idea, like, I know cervical cancer screening is a problem, and I had worked on that a few years earlier. And I had spoken to my mom because it's a hard test. Pap smear test is inconvenient when a physician has to collect samples from vagina. So our concept was bringing care to women by themselves. So we had created a prototype of a retractable dildo with a brush inside. So it's something that women can use it by themselves at home at the convenience and still get that test. And because cervical cancer is 100% curable, I think you never know where ideas can come from. And I think that idea, though it sounds funny and hilarious, led us to a finalist spot at the MIT and Harvard boot camp.
Thank you, Schmidt. I love that story. Just wherever it's interesting what goes on in your mind in terms of getting inspiration, no matter where you go. And that's something that comes along the line with me too, is being able to gain inspiration no matter where I go, from even from this webinar, even from other creators. It is, how do I take what I've seen and create something after that. So as an inspiration. So it's great that you're able to meld two pieces, unrelated pieces together from your own personal experiences. So thanks for sharing that story.
Yeah, and it's the beauty of, connecting those pieces, because ideas are not something that are well thought. Sometimes ideas just come out of nowhere, and it's more about like how you can connect those dots together and build something. Biju has an interesting question. Thanks, Biju, for a question. The question is, if you could go back in time to your former self when you started pharmacy school, what advice would you tell yourself? Ooh, that's a good one. I would say if I had to go back and do something, I would take more risk, 100% without fail. I think during my first year, second year, I was on that mindset of like, oh, everyone is going for fellowship or residency, and I have to work in a community. For example, in the P1 year, I worked for a company, Symphony RX, doing MTMs, medication therapy management, because I thought that was the go-to path which everyone is doing and everyone is successful. I think if I had to redo it, I would have said no to those mindsets for myself and look out for things that is more creative, like be more experimental in choosing opportunities. Because what will help is once you off go your fear of going away from the traditional field, because I think a lot of students, one, they don't know, one, they have some kind of fear or apprehension. What will happen if I go in there and I don't like it? It's more about, if you don't try it, how would you like it? Or how would you not like it? So I would have taken more risk. And the best part is I would not be accountable for those after some time. And yeah.
That's true. Does anyone else have any other questions for Smit? If not, I do.
I love
it. Okay. So I guess like being a pharmacy student, it's kind of hard to like figure out what you're passionate about. How did you find your passion?
It's a long journey. I think I would reframe that question, because I think I've got that question a lot. And what I have realized from my self-discovery is that I would say don't follow your passion, follow your energies. And I know people say that follow your passion, but what I have learned is following energies can give you more practical approach to things that you like or not. This was an experiment that was done by one of my aunt. She's a psychologist, and she told that time I was confused between some of the opportunities that I was presented with. And what she did was she asked me to close my eyes, and she asked me two different scenarios, opportunity one and then opportunity two. And she asked me with my eyes closed to talk about it. And she was recording that on video. So what I learned was when I was talking about opportunity one, I was all excited and like my hands were moving and my eyes were like popping out. Though it was closed, I was like, my voice elevation was there. And the other opportunity, though I liked it because they paid me more, that was one incentive that I enjoyed it, but I retracted myself. And I think all my movements were more of like silent, and I was not that excited about it. And she told me that when you see your energies, it is something that your gut is telling you to do. It's not something your conscious mind is saying. It's more of your subconscious mind is saying. So that helped me narrow down that. And I think I would love to share this because this is something that I've learned last year. And I do it very frequently in life, in professional or in personal life, is the death experiment. Last year, due to viral encephalopathy, my cousin, I lost my cousin's sister in India, and during that time it was hard. I think I had some regrets in terms of I wish I visited India one last time, or I wish I gave her a hug one last time. So, and we think of mortality as one of a taboo and we don't speak about it. What I learned from that experience was we need to see mortality in an opportunistic way and think about the decisions that we make. For example, you have two big decisions. Think of yourself lying on that deathbed and think what you'll regret more. Taking up a job which is high paying, but you might not enjoy that much, versus taking up a job that you absolutely love doing, but they're not giving you enough money. Which one would you regret more? I think those give answers. Or even it could be your personal life. Say you had an argument with a friend or with your family. And I think that helps me again and again to reevaluate myself and my priorities, and helps me see my energies more than my passion.
That's a great answer. I've never heard that before, and I think that is true though. What you were saying about energies, and it's kind of like your gut instinct. And have you videotaped yourself doing that since?
I have not, but I usually do it, when I try deep breathing. I can't do meditation yet. I'm still getting into it, but when I do deep breathing, whenever I'm in a chaos and I had to make a decision which is more strategic, I try to go through that same scenario and think, what would I regret less or what would I miss? Like, would I miss going into that space? If it's yes, then I'm definitely going into that opportunity.
That's crazy. You must do that a lot, seeing as you have so many opportunities and crazy experiences. Does anyone else have any questions about anything for Smit?
You can ask about travel, anything, what I learned in quarantine.
Or Madagascar, if you saw David's post on LinkedIn.
Smit, tell us what happened in Madagascar.
Oh boy. It was interesting. Two things that happened in Madagascar. Last year, I went to Madagascar. One, my TED Talk came out of Madagascar because that story had left me victimized about me not getting some vaccination covered under my insurance. And that inspired me to share a story on there's a lack of transparency in drug pricing in our society and how people can use technology to access more medications or have access to those care. And the second thing that happened was, I think I was going for fun and I found out that Zipline, it's a San Francisco-based company which creates medical drones that transport blood samples and necessary medications to the remote places in Madagascar. So when I'm talking about Madagascar, they don't have roads. Like, I barely saw a graveled road in that place. And if you want to go, say for example, 2 miles, it will take you more than half an hour to reach there. And places like that, it's very hard to get those medical care. Like this was something which I've not shared, but we had to stop there was an accident, and when we were talking with our translator about what happened with the accident or when will they get the care, he said like it will take 5 or 6 hours before someone comes in, and we could see that person bleeding out. So 2 of my friends were from medical school, and me and other friend of mine from pharmacy school, we need CPR, so we did that. But I think the sad part was still there's so many innovative ideas that are not reaching people. And I think Zipline was a perfect example where I was able to go to one of their centers and learn more about their pilot study and how they're utilizing that. And it's fun that they just release a drone to those remote communities which don't have any roads, not even a dirt road, and bring back those samples to a small center. And that's how the new innovative healthcare in Madagascar works. Maybe we can use it for New York, where there's so much traffic.
Yeah, thanks, Smit. So I did want to bring up one thing. So that experience wasn't something that was readily accessible or given to you through school or given to you by anyone else. So could you tell us a little bit more of the story in terms of the initiatives that you took, and kind of the little bit of deconstructing exactly how you got those experiences for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So the drone story was, I was very interested to go see the center is because one, I had researched about Madagascar before in terms of what's happening. And the funny part is every country that I look into the healthcare system. Like I just Google them. And I was thinking of going to Estonia in my spring break this year. And the funny part is Estonia is world's top 10 best technologically advanced countries, and no one knows about it. Skype was invented and discovered and grew out of Estonia. It's a country near Lithuania and Finland. So what I do is wherever I go before it, I try to understand their healthcare system. And doing that study, I found out that there was a center and there was a pilot study that was done there using drones. And I'm like, this is fantastic. I need to go there. And I persuaded my friends to go there.
Cool. Thanks, Smit.
I think Beishu asked in the chat, what type of skills have you needed to learn and use for your most recent roles?
I think some of the skills that I have recently learned is one, definitely time management, because with rotations and having a job and other projects that I'm working on with FDA, I think it was hard for me to find out time. So I think it's an interesting book. I have it. It's called Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a beautiful book that breaks down into how to manage time more efficiently. And somewhere I read this quote that really resonated to me in terms of, imagine someone having a gun on your head and ask you to do an entire 8 hours work into 1 hour. What are first things you'll get done out of your way? So I think that helped. One of the skill is time management. And I think the other skill is I'm working on is networking and how to effectively network, because connecting with people, they are people. And it's more not just about hi, hello, and say hi. I try to nurture those relationships over years. And I am investing some time and learning more about networking and just being out there and having a presence of myself. So whenever in future I needed something, an opportunity, and I'll tell you why, because one of my rotation, Mark, got canceled in the month of July, and I emailed 3 people I knew from Pfizer. I emailed a person from current rotation in the Innovation Patenting Office, and one other from J&J, and all 3 agreed to have me as a student within a day. And I think that's the beauty of networking, is or building relationships with people and bringing value to them.
So it looks like there was a lot of questions that came in. Unfortunately, we're a little bit short on time. But maybe one thing that we could answer real quick is just, hey, Smit, could you just tell us about your experience with the TED Talks in terms of how you got it? Maybe to help others in terms of getting these type of opportunities.
Absolutely. So the Ohio State University has a small TEDx community where they hosted TED Talks. And it was in my second year, I had this idea of like, what if we make our hospitals or design our hospitals as Disneylands? Because patient experience is one of the big things that everyone is talking about, and no one loves going to hospital. I have not heard any person who will be like, woohoo, I'm going to hospital. But when it comes to Disneyland, literally from 2-year-old to like an 80-year-old person will get excited about it. So that was my idea. And I totally failed. Committee thought it was not a good idea. And so I got rejection from there. And what happened was they had my profile in there. And last year, there was a topic that they wanted speakers for, which was college students and how the access of healthcare, college students and access to healthcare. And they had reached out to me like, hey, I know you have worked in this space. And I think during that time I was working with Health Plan Data Solutions. And they were like, would you like to talk about it? And that's how I ended up giving a TED Talk.
And
Thanks,
if you
Schmidt.
haven't already, you should check out Schmidt's LinkedIn profile, and he has links to that TED Talk. It's really good. So to wrap things up, nice to have you all today, and we hope to see you next time.